Now, one of the most important parts of the course is the panorama, which is hopefully going to bring your course to life. So I'm just going to show you how to create a custom panorama. Now, you're going to need a paint program. I'm using Photoshop CS5. There's a free one called GIMP, but you can use any paint program, preferably one that uses layers, because this will make it a lot easier to create your panorama. I'm not going to go into great details on the use of Photoshop. If you need to know how to use the program, there's plenty of tutorials on using these paint programs on YouTube and other places on the internet. So I'm just going to deal with the APCD aspect, but I am going to show you the techniques that you can use on a paint program that I use when I'm creating a panorama. The first thing we need to do is create the proportions of the panorama as a new canvas. So I'm just going to go File, New, and a panorama needs to be 7,680 pixels by 720. So I'm going to create a canvas that size. Now we can create one bigger because a lot of photos these days are quite large and they'll have to be scaled down quite a bit to fit on this. So it's sometimes easier to work on a larger image to start with and then just scale it down when you're finished. But for now I'm going to keep it at that. But you need the same proportion, so you could make it double the length and double the height. Just make sure it's in the same proportions, height to width, so that when you create it at the right size, it won't get squashed or stretched because you've got it in the right proportions. So this is going to be our panorama, and what we need to do is mask off parts of photos. I've got a panorama I've downloaded off the internet here, and copy them over onto our main image and then position them where we want them. So there are many ways to cut things out. I've got a magic wand tool on Photoshop which will select, depending on the tolerance, certain colors. So I can try and select things using that and add and subtract parts until I get what I want. What I tend to use is the quick selection tool, which is a nice easy way of selecting things. Again, I'll select the normal and just drag the mouse across, and this is doing a really good job. I'll take that grass as well. So I'd then copy that, go to the new image and paste it on, and this will create a new layer. So this is now on a separate layer from the background, and I can move it about. If I go to move, you'll see it just happens that this is almost the size I need anyway. Let's go to another image. Again, I'll quick select it if I can. So let's just cut this grass, and I don't want the earth this time, so I'm going to go to subtract and try and remove that part. I just need to add that little bit there because it's taken too much off, if it will let me. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't get them with this quick mask, but that's not bad. A little bit more there. So yeah, I'll copy that. Again, go to my main image and paste it on. I've now got another layer I can move around. And so you're just collecting pieces to make up your image. What you'll notice is the color difference on some images, so we need to deal with that before we do anything else. This is a much paler image, so if I cut this out and stick a piece on at the moment, you'll just notice it because it's a totally different tonal quality to the more colourful background I've got. So you'd use the image adjustments on your paint package. I would either increase the colour intensity on this one, or I'll fade the colour down to match this one on the background, so whichever works best or whatever gives you the effect you want. So if I go to brightness contrast, probably up in the contrast will immediately, there we go, it's immediately bringing it more into the colour range. And I've also got a more autumnal orange tinge to this image, so I'd probably want to shift the colour on this one to try and match it if I can. So if I hue shift, which is something I use quite a lot on things, if I shift it towards the orange, you can see I'm getting a more autumnal sort of colour now by shifting all the colours in that direction. Again, it's not quite bright enough, so I'd add a bit more contrast or saturation. And there's parts of it that are no good. This blue part will have to be adjusted. But that's the first thing we need to do, adjust the colours of the different parts, the different layers we're using, so they're all going to match a bit better. Then we would position them where we want them. And one of the easiest ways to get them to blend in, I need to scale this first, I think it's a bit big, so I'm just going to scale it down. If I hold the shift key on Photoshop, I can drag the corners and it will keep it in proportion, otherwise it will stretch it in different directions. But so let's shrink it down, something like that. And one of the easiest ways to get one image to blend in with another is just use an eraser brush with a soft edge. So if I select maybe 60-70% hardness on the brush, and you can just rub the edges out that you don't want, and it will just blend it in better. Let's get rid of all that. I've got 44%. I wondered why it wasn't going completely. I've got it on 44% transparency, so I need to go on 100. I probably need a softer edge on this brush for now, but it's just a matter of experimenting, and you'll just find let's take out this blue bit down there. So I'm just going to erase it, the parts that aren't working. Again, that's far too light and blue, but you can adjust that by just masking things off. So I could mask that, the part that isn't working, and just adjust the colours of that on its own. Go to the hue saturation again, let's see what we can do with it. Let's darken it up a bit. Immediately that's a better blend with the rest. That's a bit more natural. Deselect it. So erase the brushes around the edge just to take out the bits you don't want. And another method is the clone brush. Now this is easier when you've got things on the same layer. So once you've got it roughly how you want, so I've got layer 2 how I want it with layer 1, I could merge layer 2 down onto layer 1, so now they're both all part of the same layer, and I can use a thing called a clone brush, which will allow me to copy parts of the image to other parts, just to blend things in. So I could select parts of these trees here, and I could paint them over here to make it blend in better. Just decide what I'm going to do. Let's turn the brush down a bit. So you would hold out and click, and you can see in the brush the part it's going to copy, and then when you start painting, it's copying the part from over there to over here. Again, if you set it to a transparency setting, so it's not completely solid, you can quite often get a nice blend and make a more natural, softer blend, just to get rid of the hard, unnatural edges. Darken it up a bit more there. So you can get rid of the joins. So here we've got a problem where they've used a photo stitching program by the looks of it to make this panorama, so the photos haven't quite stitched together, so we've got a mistake along here. So we could clone this. If I go to solid again, we could clone this line here, line it up down here, and I can just paint the line through. Clone a bit. Oops. Clone a bit. I'm trying to do this really quickly, but this is far too big a brush to do this and make it look natural. But you get the idea. So we just got a more natural line, and again here I'd need to touch that up a bit, so I could maybe clone part of this steeper part up here so that it joins up. It's not quite lined up right. That's better. So cloning's the other way to get the photos to join up naturally. And one of the last things, when we've got all our pieces of photos joined up, is to get the ends to join, which is quite tricky because this is going to wrap completely around 360 degrees around your course. We need this end to match up with this end. Now the best way to do that is using a wraparound offset, which will shift our picture across. So if I go to filter, offset, set this to 0 for now, and this to 0, we can shift the image left, right, and it will wrap around. So usually I do it about halfway. And this is equally important when you're making textures. And it's set on wraparound. And that will give us the two ends actually in the middle. So same way, you've got to try and blend these two together. Well, these are quite different images at the moment, so I would probably need another image over the two to blend them together. What I might be able to get away with on CS5 is the content fill, which is a brilliant new thing that tries to patch up anything you don't like. So for instance, if I draw around that house, for instance, and right click on it and click fill, content aware, it will try and get rid of it naturally. It's not absolutely perfect. Sometimes it does an amazing job, sometimes not so good, but if it hasn't quite got it right, it's cloned in a lot of power cables and things in that bit, but you can then just go around with a clone brush and touch it up. It's not a problem, but it's quite good for panoramas, I've found. You can quickly paint that out there. You can quickly paint bits out, but it's really good for creating panoramas. So I could probably fill the join in with the content aware. We'll see if it works. That's starting to get there. Don't know whether we could fill that, but you can just keep drawing and clicking, and quite often you'll get something near what you want, and then you can manually paint the rest in with the clone brush. I get rid of that bit. Fill. Okay. But that's getting there already. That's looking a bit more natural. There's just this problem here with the field. But I could put in some sort of hedge here, or a plant, maybe a tree, just to hide the part where it's joining. Or I could get rid of this field completely. If I keep highlighting the actual field, I could actually remove it and put something else in. That looks more natural. There we go. That's not bad, is it? Quite amazing. There's a little bit of squariness here that I would need to again clone out with a brush. I'd need a softer edge as well. That's not a very good job. Using a hard brush like this, but don't like that part there. I get very finicky and have a job to stop once I start. I'll be doing this. This video will end up as a 2-hour one. I need to just leave it, but you get the idea. No, I don't want to get rid of that now. Content aware fill, absolutely brilliant. I mean, look at that. You have a job doing that any better manually. So once you've got it all joined together, all blended, color corrected, the last problem is creating the alpha channel. So we've got it on one layer now, and the background is just plain black, and we need to create an alpha channel. This is a little bit tricky because along the edges of your image where you've been cutting things out, you'll find some of the pixels are actually semi-transparent. If I turn the background off, we might be able to see. If I zoom in, what you'll see is when we get very close, the checkerboard is the transparent part. You can see here on the joins there's darker squares, but you can still see the checkerboard because these are semi-transparent, and we don't want these because these will leave a nasty white line around our pano when we put it into links. So we need to make these solid, and this is the way I do it on Photoshop. You'll just have to find your own way on other paint programs, but I will show you my way of getting rid of these.